Have you ever noticed that some people stay stuck on the same problem for months while others solve it and move forward in days? The difference isn't in the intensity of the problem. It's in the speed of response. A mind that suffers remains stagnant. A mind that reacts wins. And today you'll understand the exact protocol that separates these two operations. The bottleneck isn't the suffering itself. It's the time you spend processing the suffering without executing anything. You think about the problem, talk about the problem, feel the problem, but you don't move a single piece to solve it. This creates a cycle. The more you process without acting, the more your brain interprets that the problem is too big to be solved. And then you stop. Suffering becomes identity, action becomes exception. This is the most expensive operational waste that exists. Mental energy burned in a loop with no output. Most people confuse depth of thinking with quality of thinking. They believe that spending more time analyzing a problem will reveal a better solution. But there's a threshold. After a certain point, additional processing doesn't generate new insights. It generates anxiety. Your brain starts running the same scenarios on repeat, each time with slightly different emotional coloring, but zero operational difference. This is the equivalent of running a machine at full capacity while producing nothing. Pure waste. The illusion is thinking you need to process everything before reacting. You don't. Processing is useful when it generates a decision. When it doesn't, it's rumination, and rumination is mental production line waste. Stop here. Suffering doesn't prepare you better. Suffering without action makes you worse because it trains your brain to accept paralysis as the default response. The mind that reacts doesn't ignore suffering. It converts suffering into data, and data into command. Example, you lose an important project. Mind that suffers. Why did this happen to me? I'm not good enough. Maybe I should give up. Mind that reacts. Where was the error? What can I adjust now? What's the next step? Same pain, opposite protocols. One turns inward and spirals, the other turns outward and executes. The emotional impact is identical. The operational outcome is completely different. Here's what most people miss. Reaction speed isn't about being reckless. It's about recognizing that the cost of delayed action compounds faster than the cost of imperfect action. Every hour you spend in analysis paralysis is an hour your competitors spend executing. Every day you wait for clarity is a day the problem grows more complex. Speed isn't the enemy of precision. Hesitation is. Rule: immediate action reduces residual suffering. The faster you move the first piece, the less time your brain spends in an unproductive loop. It's not about having the perfect answer. It's about having an operational response fast enough to break the paralysis. Henry Ford said, "You can't build a reputation on what you're going to do." The same applies to suffering. You don't get out of it by planning to get out. You get out by executing the exit. This rule applies across every domain: financial loss, relationship conflict, career setback, health crisis. The pattern is always the same. Those who move first, recover first. Those who wait for perfect conditions stay stuck indefinitely because perfect conditions don't arrive. Clarity comes from action, not contemplation. Step 1, identify the input. What happened? Don't interpret. Don't justify. Just describe the fact. Example, lost client X, not lost because I'm incompetent. The moment you add interpretation, you're no longer dealing with data. You're dealing with narrative. And narrative is where paralysis lives. Strip it down to the objective event. What actually occurred? Not what it means about you. Not what it says about your future. Just the fact. Step 2. Define one corrective action in less than 5 minutes. You don't need to solve everything. You need to move something. Example, I'll review the proposal and identify one flaw. Notice the specificity, not, I'll fix my entire approach. Not, I'll become better at sales. One action, one adjustment, one move. This is critical. Your brain can't execute abstract intentions. It can execute concrete tasks. Give it something tangible to grab onto. Step 3. Execute before processing more. Take the action before you go back to thinking about the problem. Execution breaks the loop. Thinking without execution feeds the loop. This is where most people fail. They identify the action, then immediately return to analysis. But what if this doesn't work? What if I'm missing something? Stop. Execute first. Analyze after. Action creates new information. Thinking about action creates nothing. Real example. A businessman loses $50,000 on a bad investment. Mind that suffers. Spends 3 weeks ruminating, blaming others, paralyzed. Mind that reacts. Same day, schedules meeting with accountant, adjusts cash flow, cuts 2 unnecessary expenses. Within 72 hours already operating with a new plan. Both felt the same pain. Only one kept producing. Here's another. A writer receives a brutal rejection from a publisher. Mind that suffers. Questions their entire talent. Rereads the rejection 50 times. Tells friends they're giving up. 3 months later, still hasn't written anything new. Mind that reacts. Reads rejection once, extracts the one useful criticism, opens a new document that same evening. 1 week later, has revised the manuscript. Both experienced the same disappointment. One converted it into fuel, the other converted it into identity. The difference isn't talent. It isn't resilience. It's protocol. Systems beat emotions every time. When you have a protocol for responding to adversity, you don't need to feel motivated to act. You just follow the process. Motivation is unreliable. Process is consistent. Henry Ford built the world's most efficient production line because he eliminated idle time between stages. Your mind works the same way. Suffering is inevitable. Paralysis is optional. The difference between those who remain stuck and those who win isn't in the absence of pain. It's in the speed of response. You can process the problem for weeks, or you can solve it in days. The choice is operational, not emotional. Every moment you spend in reactive mode is a moment you're building momentum. Every moment you spend in suffering mode is a moment you're burning resources with no return. This isn't about suppressing emotion, it's about channeling it. Use the pain as signal, not as destination. Let it tell you where the system broke, then fix the system. If this video changed how you deal with adversity, share it with someone who's trapped in their own suffering. Protocol solves.